production value.
Now it's streaming live to YouTube.
Oh my gosh, we're live.
You finally made it to YouTube.
Started streaming games.
Yeah.
What's up, Twitch? Today I'm going to be speed running TXTbooks' presentation. See if I can break it. Clipping through walls of our presentation.
Oh, hi,
Hi.
Amanda from Exile. Nice to chat with you.
Yeah. Excited for everyone coming on in, checking it out.
Gosh. Toma is on stream taking pictures of us.
Our friends are roasting us for wearing all black.
Yeah.
We didn't plan.
This is accidental.
Yeah.
I put this on because it's cold upstairs.
Yeah.
It's a little warmer down.
Yeah.
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 This is our very
Rose and
intense
Toma.
design talk.
Yeah, super intense design talk.
Yeah.
Gotta wear all black.
Well, Nichole at least has like a wizard shirt kind of going on.
Yeah, maybe
There's
that's
some
not
color, but maybe you can't see it very much. But it's okay.
Tony the pasta boy. That's whoever that may be.
Yeah.
Spiritual connection. Would love a little spaghetti after this.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm thinking about dinner a little bit.
All right, what's everyone eating for dinner? Drop it in the chat.
Yeah.
Where are you from? What's for dinner?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whose shirt do you like most?
Tacos.
Tacos, spaghetti. Tony the pasta boy is making spaghetti.
Nice.
Thank you for staying on concept.
On pasta brand.
Okay, I'm just gonna introduce you guys and pass
Yes,
them.
sounds good.
Hey everyone, I'm Sunny. I'm the Fairs and Editions coordinator at Printed Matter. Welcome to the third program in the series that's expanding on 4 online projects that we commissioned on the occasion of Printed Matter and Exile Books publishing section at NADA Miami this past December that TXTbooks was tabling at. Rob was there. I'm pleased to welcome Nichole, Kurt, and Rob from TXTbooks, which is an artist-run and DIY publishing initiative based in Brooklyn. Tonight's conversation will focus on their latest video game project, Book Fell into Ocean, in which a user pilots a Riso-drone to survey the damage from a container ship crash, featuring 24 artists' works floating in the water off the coast of Miami. A special thanks to the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation for their tremendous support of this online presence of Printed Matter and Exile Books at NADA Miami 2021, and including the commissions of these 4 online projects and this month's program series. You can visit Artist Books Miami to play the game, engage with the other programs, and learn more about the whole Miami production. And we have the links in the chat to the website, to the game, and also to a table that we made on the Printed Matter website that is like related publications to design, games, things that TXTbooks have printed and made. So check that out too. It's in the chat. And then a few little things before we begin, housekeeping. Feel free to say hi in the chat and tell us where you're listening from. And if you have any questions, you can drop them in the Q&A section of the Zoom or in the comments, and we'll get to them towards the end of the program. If you want to watch us with closed captions, the best way to do so is to click the link in the chat, which is our YouTube channel that is also broadcasting this, and there are auto-generated captions on there. And also just if you have any questions, you can, I think, chat me privately on the Zoom. And with that, it's on you guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction. Yeah, as Sunny said, my name is Kurt. I'm 1/5 of TXTbooks.
I'm Nicole, and I'm also 1/5 textbooks. Yeah.
I'm Rob. I'm going to make myself count for 2/3 of this fraction. No, also 1/5 of this project, textbooks, which I think what we want to do maybe first is to give y'all who maybe aren't familiar with our practice just kind of a brief introduction, and then going into thinking about how we thought about publications, gaming, fun, play, and experimentation, which eventually led to this project, which so he helped commission. So without further ado, let's enter the screen
screen share. So yeah, I think like the first thing that we want to do is kind of like provide a little bit of prehistory and some background on our project, because we realized that probably a lot of y'all are not maybe as familiar with our project, or maybe have limited context. So we thought that it would be best to kind of start from a place of just how we started and how we've kind of arrived at some of our thinking.
Yeah, we're just gonna do a quick little like introduction on what textbooks is. There's 5 of us, and we all met in school, and we all most of everyone was in like the ComD department
at Pratt,
and they had a independent publishing class that had access to a risograph, and that sort of like started our like curiosity with printing.
Yeah, so a lot of what kind of happened very early on was us realizing that in school we gravitated towards self-directed projects rather than projects that were like quote unquote fake client work, and that through that there was like an interest in generating content yourself, which we thought was kind of enticing as we went out into the real world and were maybe like scared about like having to work a job and take direction and maybe losing some of the level of self-interest that you have in school.
Yeah, and I think in addition, when you have this kind of framework of an institution, an educational institution or anything, it kind of gives you a purpose to make something. And I think we're finding joys in making things and knowing that, some of those guidelines, those kind of like guide rails that would like lead you into creating things after you graduated would be lifted. We kind of, I think, intentionally made a project that would allow us to kind of continue just making these things.
And part of the joy of that was just like working as a group of friends and kind of like supporting each other mutually, having a level of like, just like sharing something and seeing if you can make someone else laugh, and that being a kind of like level of success.
Mm-hmm.
And from that, we started by sneaking back into school and using their resources for a while, for maybe like 2 years before we were like kind of made the leap to try and continue with our project. So like here, this is our first studio after we bought a Riso. We bought it from some ex professors of ours, and we had this like little tiny sliver of a space. And we basically kept on going and kind of slowly growing the project, and through the years, like adding more people into the mix in terms of like our collaboration. So where we maybe started all self-generated, after having the tools at our disposal, it kind of quickly became something that we wanted to consciously invite people into the kind of mix.
Yeah.
And I think even from the beginning, it was very scrappy, right? In that first picture, you can't see it, but on the other side it was a corner of a studio, and then there was a father and son who rented out that space to make model trains, which is very cool, right?
Yeah.
And then I think kind of fast forwarding to as we built it out, bit by bit, we were like acquiring tools that we need on the cheap. Kurt was hunting on public auction websites and everything. And
Craigslist.
The 4 of us kind of, again, bits and pieces put together to eventually make a pretty well-functioning kind of studio space.
Mm-hmm.
And we've kept it going since then. here is a very recent picture of us upgrading our studio, just a little bit more, plus snack time. Like we said, we work with friends and strangers.
Yeah, I feel like something that's really like fun and cool about our project is like when we first started out, it was literally just like making like silly, goofy things for ourselves. And then, yeah, as we accumulated all this stuff and like we had all this space and we brought friends and stuff, like we were able to like make money off of these things, like not like a lot of money, but enough to like support new projects. And then that gave us like so much like encouragement to start publishing people's works, and especially works that they like wouldn't normally make. And I think that's like a huge like thing that we are pursuing now, is just like keeping trying to have that spirit of like having fun and like doing things you wouldn't normally do, and making like things and having our space be a resource for other people rather than just like ourselves.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's nice to be asked to do something, and that kind of adds an invigoration of energy that you wouldn't otherwise have. And another component of this was we used to travel for fairs a lot. It's been a little bit harder to do as of late.
But I think this too, was definitely what kind of like sparked us really kind of continuing on this path, right? Like our first New York Art Book Fair, we were just surrounded by so many like great people and so much, you know, interesting kind of artwork being made and stuff that we loved and stuff that we can buy for like, you know, $10 and it can live on our shelves for, you know, as long as we have shelves, right? So this kind of the physical nature of, you know, the artist book community coming together for these kind of like touch points was really, really special. And it you know, it was a nice way for us to, you know, justify traveling out here and there. And, you know, here was a shot from our first one in LA, you know, we're going out to the beach. Love that.
We got some donuts in the morning at like 7 a.m. We were out in Redondo Beach and we ate donuts on the beach and there were dolphins swimming around. It's very picturesque.
Yeah.
So, you know, hard to beat that. And something that I think like that energy is something that's kept us drawing back. And maybe something that relates to our game that we'll get to a little bit more later. And as kind of a conclusive note, we kind of operate as like a full-time side project that's like something that we build into our schedule, but are not necessarily trying to have be our kind of like main source of income, which is especially hard in a place like New York. At least how we run it. So this kind of leads to like our model of publishing, which we kind of jokingly refer to very much by the Outback Steakhouse motto, which is no rules, just right, which kind of ends up being a little bit of everything. As long as it feels right, then we're kind of into that.
Yeah. I think something that's nice about this is that if there's something that, again, going back to like what we really originally like doing, which was just like making, right? If something felt good, let's just make it, right? Like, I think we don't have necessarily even a big kind of like thematic tie-in or like an aesthetic, like something super cohesive that makes all of our publications. In the end, I think the way we produce it ties it a bit together. But we like this idea that like everything we make feels like it come from so many like far like different ends of like the artistic and like artist community, which keeps it exciting for us too.
Yeah,
definitely. So yeah, making something no one asked for. If they like it, that's great. If not, oh well. Have fun, do whatever.
Words to live by.
Words to live by. So through some of our experimentation over the years, there have been some themes that have kind of come up like over and over again, kind of unintentionally. And I think we've kind of slowly worked our way back into thinking about gaming. We all grew up playing games. This is the Mountain Dew gamer fuel that to me played a pretty significant role in my teenage years. And I think this kind of like thinking about gaming as, I don't know, something core to us, like I don't know. It's something that we've just come back to in various kind of capacities.
I was just gonna say, I think like a lot of people in our generation is like exposed to gaming and like feels like gaming and is like a part of their childhood or like nostalgia, and it's like has a lot of similarities to like other creative practices and stuff, and like the deep grinding modes that you can get in gaming is like really similar to like the deep grind of like bookmaking.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I mean,
Yeah.
Nichole is a certified grinder,
Yeah.
but I think you know, what's maybe like something that we like to think about is that like if you look at like kind of like artistic output, you know, over like the say decades beforehand, you know, it's nobody was growing up gaming, right? And I think our generation was one of the first that was like really kind of core to it. Like, I don't know, it was easy for my mom to be like, hey, you can game, I'm gonna, you know, go and, you know, do some work or something on the side. Like it was something that I think we all kind of spent many, many hours of. So I think it only makes sense that this kind of through line comes through in our work and like our personal work, because it was, I think, such like a shared experience that we spent so much time together collectively on.
Absolutely. In this screenshot here, this is one of Rob's books that I want to say was made in 2014 or 2015. That was it was called Deep Web Farmers Market and Other Plans for Utopia. And one of those plans is a National PS2 Appreciation Day, which just makes sense as a bank holiday.
Yeah.
It was a really important console.
Yeah.
Really important. Another really major one is this project by Nichole.
I made this in 2016, and it's based off of this like dress doll game that I had on my computer when I was like 11 or something. It was probably like,
It was like a browser-based game or something.
it was like you had to download it to your computer, and then like you would download sets like
Right.
that people would make themselves. And if you had like I'm not sure off the top of my head which program they used, but like they would make there were people who would make templates, and then like fan artists would like go in and like make their own characters and stuff, or like versions of characters. They like
Right.
make bootleg
And then
versions
you could like dress them up.
yeah, and then you can
different
dress
things.
them up. And the theme of the project for me was like dealing with the like hypersexualization of these characters, and like me being on forums being like a kid and talking to like other kids, and then also like adult men who are like playing this game.
Right.
And how like there's like a weird overlap of all these things. Anyway, but that was like a huge thing.
The clash
that
of fans.
Yeah, a clash of fans. That was like a huge thing that was like inspiring to me. Like this project in general was like a huge leap into like other projects for myself. And like before I made this project, I wasn't like working that much on stuff, and I was like trying to think of all the things that made me happy, and I was like, gaming makes me happy, anime makes me happy, like these are things I'm gonna pull from. And I think that's like similar to a lot of people who like reference these materials. Anyway, yeah.
I mean, it's interesting though, like talking about anime, because that's like the perfect kind of segue to this slide, which is like the phenomenon that certain schools will, art schools will like not, or will invalidate your portfolio if you like draw anime or kind of manga inspired art, or that's kind of seen institutionally as like a invalidating factor.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like that is something that, I don't know, our generation and people are kind of like rejecting as a concept, and is kind of slowly being peeled away. It's something that I see people talk about on Twitter, for example. But
yeah,
I feel like when we were kind of entering school, that was like super, like not a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think even just kind of seeing like the generations, like from when we graduated to kind of the current kind of landscape around kind of like art schools right now, the influence is like only getting stronger. And I think like the nice thing is now that like it's maybe not pure like fan art, but the ways that people could kind of think about like the ways in which they've like, seen this like types of art forms and how they could kind of like then interpret it into their work, which you think is.
And I think just like real briefly, like the high and low art thing is like, there's like, when we're in art school, I feel like there's a sort of like distaste for referencing anything that had like any mass market appeal. And like, I think this ties into publishing too, and why a lot of people are drawn to publishing, because like multiples somehow degrades the like rarefication of art objects in like the like fine art context. But
sorry, our cat just sneezed. Here.
But like I think our generation's like understand that like multiples are actually just as good, and if not like can be more exceptional than some fine art or like rarefied objects. So like, why shouldn't you be referencing these things that are so ubiquitous in our life and stuff? So
definitely,
yeah, hopefully.
And I think on another level, like you're starting to see that even kind of permeate kind of like prestige media outlets. For example, this is a story that was published in the New Yorker called Playing Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain by Jambil Kochai, which is a really great story kind of talking about the dissonance between playing Metal Gear Solid 5, which is set in Afghanistan, and the author being first generation Afghan in America, and kind of like having this weird vibration between like the media representation of a place and this kind of idea or familiarity that you have yourself and on like a family level. So you do kind of see that making its way into a larger kind of conversation and style. And all of that kind of leads us into our kind of first experimentations with games as textbooks. And we can try to go relatively quickly through this section. So on January 2nd, 2020, at 6:39 p.m., we sent out an invitation for a project called Text Reader, which was to be called Video Game Reader, all themed around video games, inviting different artists to consider games as a kind of space of cultural commentary, and to kind of dig deep into how gaming has maybe shaped their lives. And then before we could publish it, it was a global pandemic. So that changed a lot of our calculus. With that, we spent a lot of time gaming, especially up in Rob's apartment.
We did like a LAN party. We like all live in the same building, and we did like a LAN party at Rob's place. Like all of us is really cute.
Yeah.
But I feel like too, like this was also like a nice kind of introduction, like or a reintroduction into like thinking about like games more intentionally, because like this is where we were kind of hanging out for a bit. Like there's the perfect timing between the release of Animal Crossing, which is a very kind of like casual hanging out game, and the point where we couldn't really hang out, and specifically in the point where we couldn't do like things like book fairs or like launches. I think really kind of got us like in this mindset. We're just thinking about gaming even more and gaming more.
Absolutely.
And so we sort of like came up with the idea of doing this like show in Animal Crossing, and it was sort of like on the fly.
You had been kind of thinking about it. You were like, it'd be nice to do
like,
something, right? But
yeah, like involving like specifically the like there's like in the game you can make like custom tiles and stuff, and so as like a painting thing, I was like, this would be really interesting, like to have work like around that, whether that like is a live thing or like a book later or something. But because they have the like multiplayer function, we decided to like, it would be really fun to just have it like hosted on like my island and have people come through and stuff. And our friend Chuck from Lucky Riso like came through with his like amazing like Twitch streaming
yeah.
technology and helped us like
Yeah.
put it all together. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this, I think, was really interesting that, like, you know, this wasn't necessarily building a video game, but like working within a video game to do something that we really like couldn't do, right? So nobody could throw, say, a group show together IRL at the moment. And so doing it here, I think, was we were able to do a lot of really interesting things, like playing off a lot of these kind of like art show tropes, starting with the invitation. Oh, it's the launch night, we're going to have a DJ, and building that out in there. You know, hanging things up as well. You know, it didn't have to be a white cube, right? I think, you know, Nichole in turn like really reformatted her entire like game to work as this art exhibit like experience. And, you know, we were able to work with a ton of our friends. I believe we had 20 different artists, each kind of working within this kind of 64 by 64 pixel-ish type of grid. Maybe it's not exactly what it was, but like a different type of constraint, which also kind of meant a different type of experience with it.
Yeah. I'll just like go through
Skip
these a little
through.
bit.
Yeah, so this is a picture of the live stream.
Yeah.
This is it going. Thank you so much, Chuck. Couldn't have done it without you. And it's like this zoom in that's just your character running around and yelling, participate.
And it's cool too. You know, I got picked up by a few different media outlets. A big thanks to Mimi, if you're on here, for teaching us how to write a press release. But because we weren't working and we didn't really have anything to do, we were like, what if we tried to like blow this up as big as possible? So we kind of learned how to write press releases. We had I think somebody from, I forget who, do you know, a preview of the gallery. They came in, had a personal walkthrough, which again, a very kind of janky experience because let me just be clear, the online features on the Nintendo Switch are not great.
Not good at all.
It crashed like 10 times during the show itself. And every time someone comes to visit your island, it takes like 1 minute for their plane to fly in.
Yeah.
Everyone has to watch it. But in it, there's a kind of funny thing where we were literally just like, how far can we kind of take this? And how far can it go? And kind of like in a similar way to making zines when you're self-publishing, like you can kind of be shocked by what may happen with like a small piece of paper that you put together, or in this case, this show that we kind of strung together. And then 10 months went by, and we did not really do a whole lot for our press during that time, because it was a very, very weird time. We were not going to studio hardly at all. But anyways, the next year, basically, Printed Matter's virtual art book fair rolled around. And we were super excited about that, obviously. And there had been some other virtual fairs that we had participated in or thought through. And
but this one was exciting because like for obvious reasons, it was like a huge marker in our calendar. And during quarantine, like I learned a new skill, which was like learning Unity and stuff and like 3D modeling. And we're just, for this fair specifically, we're coming around to like finishing the text reader game or the text reader book. And so I came up with the idea where I was like, what if we just make a game and have it be like really like just funky and weird and like have all the books on display, because like it's a video game, it's like makes sense. And I was like excited to like do something with this skill that I learned. And
which led to this absolutely mad screenshot, but which Nichole could talk about. But I think what was really nice too was just like this kind of prompt, which started out in the world of gaming and was inspired by the world of gaming, then kind of brought into, you know, this printed piece to, I think, launch it back in like where it all started, but as printed spreads in the game was wild. But you should.
It is basically just like meta, like having like imprints of like stuff that people put together like through a digital way, and then like having that printed and then scanning that back in and then putting it in a virtual space, and then having a bunch of all this like nostalgic, like silly like stuff that's all like free assets like assembled really chaotically. I just feel like it fit with the whole vibe of the text reader project, and yeah, it was well received and people had a really fun time like having something to like interact with that like coincided with this thing that like the fairs to me and to a lot of other people is about like being around people and sharing your like projects with each other and like being happy to meet people and like have fun, you know. And yeah, I think this sort of symbolized that fun in a way.
It felt very natural to go virtual for a virtual art book fair, and to kind of initiate 3D space in that way.
Like, close this. It's cool. We'll just skip the video because it's like.
Do you want to show the video or keep it moving?
No, it's cool. We should just keep going.
And this is what it looked like in browser. Yeah, had it big on the web page, and you could kind of play through it.
Yeah.
And through doing all of that, we ended up kind of having some like realizations and thoughts on gaming, and how that kind of related to our practice and publishing at large.
Yeah. Publishing a game on itch.io and publishing a zine at Printed Matter is the same thing, basically. I mean, it's not, but it is. It's like in similar ways, like in independent like gaming and independent publishing have really similar like end goals, which is to have like creative freedom for individuals while being able to like make money off of it and be appreciated and have like no restrictions through like institutional pressures and stuff. So
totally.
There's something really like cool about
and to find community,
right?
In
and
a
to
way.
find community. Yeah. I think in general, like after doing the Animal Crossing show and the like text reader book in general, and then the game, I think we all sort of talked and were like really interested in doing like ongoing virtual projects, just like trying to brainstorm things too. And like something really cool about gaming and bookmaking is like in a lot of gaming, even like unless you're playing something really like narrative driven or like a shooter game or something, sandbox like style is really popular and like has opened a lot of like.
And what is a sandbox style?
A sandbox style game is like is something like Animal Crossing or like a farming simulator where you get dropped into a virtual space and the game has certain parameters and resources that you're given, but you have creative freedom to use those resources like however you want. You can create and like rearrange things within that space to like your benefit or just to make like dumb stuff or have fun or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think like that is sort of our approach, like specifically with textbooks, like to publishing too, where like we look at the resources we have available and we try to like have fun and like put together things that are like experimental with the like resources that we're limited to.
Definitely.
Yeah.
There's also the community support, which we kind of mentioned briefly, but like very much like how in the self-publishing community, there's, for example, like a risography Discord channel where people help troubleshoot questions and share techniques, share advice on how to do things. There's a lot of that available for DIY and indie gaming as a community. People share extremely readily, or so it seems.
In my experience, just like not doing it for very long, like you can basically get help from strangers like on anything you need. Like I mean, I haven't done super advanced stuff, but people have, there's like endless tutorials, and I feel like it's similar with risography or just publishing. Like people are very open with sharing like how the process of making things are, so that like more people can like learn these tools.
Right. There's like an appreciation,
Yeah.
not necessarily gatekeeping, at least in a certain way.
Yeah.
I think too, like what the nice kind of parallel to between like I think indie gaming and sort of indie publishing is that like amateurism is kind of celebrated, and it lets you get something out quicker, and in turn kind of sometimes can make you know, whatever the idea is, no matter how ridiculous it is, like a less kind of barrier until it like enters in the world, right? Which I think is a nice kind of, you know, counterpoint between, you know, we love, there's some AAA games which we absolutely love, and there's some indie games which we absolutely love that, you know, do so much with so much less power, right? In the same way, I think like there's a parallel between, you know, a small handmade zine, which we might love, as well as, you know, a really big, like incredibly like considered offset photo book. I think these kind of, the range is great, and we want to make sure in both spaces, both in the gaming space and the independent publishing space, that like the lower end can kind of be brought up just in the same way that the higher end stuff is.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Yeah, all levels of seriousness can be taken seriously, and collaboration and support is like very important to us to like continue through like these types of projects. And new technology is like a great way to reframe traditional art practices for more audiences. Like I think the coolest thing about like using gaming and stuff is like I feel like there are people who like were introduced to our projects that normally wouldn't like have interacted in the same way just because we did this like fun thing, you know.
Totally.
Yeah.
And there's also some like build parallels just in terms of like the technicalities that kind of go into making things. Like in the same way that you would have to separate out a book for printing on Riso, there's like a ton of kind of particular techniques that go into prepping a file or a game to like live online.
Yeah. There's a lot of similarities of like using specifically for bookmaking, like using two-dimensional imagery or like two-dimensional basis to then like create a three-dimensional object. And you can't make the three-dimensional thing without those two-dimensional things. And it's like, I mean, with everything you can have like commonalities, but I think a lot of creative people get really like purist about their like experimentation with things and like don't see those connections. And I think it's like great to open up and try to accept new things and see there's like more in common than there's differences.
Definitely.
These are just like some fun examples of like specifically during quarantine. I feel like, I mean, not the Club Penguin thing, but these just fun examples of like people online coming together, like having fun or like experiencing creativity through like a virtual experience instead of just a straight up like Zoom situation or something.
We had some great Kumo Space gatherings for the Brooklyn Art Book Fair.
Yeah.
Which shout out to that. Shout out Hannah for initiating those great spaces.
Yeah.
And yeah, at the end of the day, like in the same way that a book or zine is, the game can be a container for a thought, which I don't think we necessarily had in that nice of language until very recently. Except maybe Nichole had that in good language because you've been thinking about it a lot more.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads into the most recent project, which is kind of the culmination of a lot of this thinking.
Mm-hmm. We got invited to do, or we applied to do like the NADA Miami with Exile Books and Printed Matter. And we got specifically asked to do a project sort of similar to the text reader game and similar to the Animal Crossing, like having some sort of virtual thing. And we thought definitely making some sort of like Unity project, whatever that would be, and using all the skills and sort of like ideas we had learned from like those previous projects to make something like more like cohesive and have like a better like original concept. And I think there's it's like still somewhat like pandemic affected, and we're all just like traumatized by all this stuff going on, like the world is in chaos, and we're just like,
but also kind of embracing some of the humor that was happening. I mean, I feel like the ship getting stuck in the Suez Canal was like a major moment in just a weird like pop culture, but also like supply chain.
It was that, I think, the right kind of combination of like talking about issues at large while it kind of coming out as like this silly joke where it's like boat stuck. It's one of those things you just can't like make up.
And I don't know, I think just in general we're like thinking about like things that happen for us, and I'm like, every time that I'm cropping books, like I'll bump into it and just knock all this stuff over, or like
it's very relatable, honestly.
So cargo ships falling and like trying to carry boxes of like lots of like material or things, and like you're just lost at sea,
which was I think that is the nice thing here, is that like it was fun to watch, right? But it was this kind of big inspiration point because, the pandemic had affected our production, right? Like some of these books that we had planned, 2 years earlier were just now coming out. And it was a nice way to kind of think about like, okay, these things are coming to us. Like, and this was like a really kind of like this pop culture flashpoint. Could this be like kind of like a starting point for like this idea of this virtual project that we got asked to do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think like with that and with self-publishing, like there is often a lot that can go wrong, even as simple as like for Riso, like printing like 500 sheets of paper with like the wrong image. And you're like, okay, I'm gonna have to wait like a week for my new paper to come, etc. So it felt kind of natural to us. We were also kind of like thinking about like the nature of this kind of first in-person fair and like the possibility and the kind of backdrop within that, thinking about the context of like being in Miami and kind of this like kind of fun in the sun kind of like atmosphere, kind of coupled with, I don't know, like a sense of, I don't know how you would put it, like kind of being like out again for the first time. So we're thinking about that as a backdrop. So, what if your books just didn't make it?
Which was something we were definitely considering. It wasn't a problem we had in the past, like, 2 years. Like, how do we juggle?
So I do remember at one of the LA art book fairs, there was a exhibitor who literally was tabling just one book. I think it was Jeremy from Soft City. They'd shipped their stuff, but it didn't arrive. So they just had their one book that was their most recent book on the table. And we were like, yeah, that would happen to us at this point.
So, I think we kind of came together and we thought about, okay, we have this loose idea about all of everything fell out and it's stuck in the ocean, right? And then, coming up with this proposal gave us, I think, a nice framework to be like, okay, how do we actually describe these like two loosely connected ideas into like this framework for a project, and this project that actually kind of been percolating with Nichole, who's been like building these skills to actually make it happen, right? And so like I think the framework of having like this actual like commission project made us like kind of think about it, write it down like in a way that feels like quite formal, which was a nice kind of, I think, guiding light within like these sort of sets of constraints that we had to get this thing really built in time.
And yeah, I think like just another thing too is like NADA being like an art fair. That sort of like pushed us to making it like oriented around having people's like fine art pieces like on a cargo ship.
Exactly.
That's falling out. Yeah.
Yeah. And so essentially, we were thinking, just what if all the art fell into the ocean and you were kind of forced to view the art in its damaged form, and to pilot around that and kind of like own that as an aesthetic choice.
But yeah, I'm just gonna start talking about like the actual build of it and like try and go through this a little quickly, but I do want to read it. So like
I'll be your page.
Yeah, sounds good.
Kurt's going to feed the cat.
Yeah. I was like so excited to learn to make my own water, and it was like this huge frustration, and it took me like a week and a half to like write the code for like a nice water, and then like I couldn't figure out how to make a float code script for it like within the time constraint that we had, so we ended up just like buying a pre-made water with a float script, which like saved so much time and it looked really good. But yeah, so some assets we bought, we basically just got the water and then this like cool flame effect for the like exploded cargo ship, and then we built some assets ourselves, and it was like this project was really fun like way for us all to sort of work together in a new way. And so like we had like a night where like Kurt, Rob, and I got together and I like showed them really like quickly like just super basic stuff in Blender, and then like we made a list of like different trash we wanted to make, and it sort of like had the same energy as when like we're doing production work for like our books and we're all together and we like order food and like hang out and make stuff. Yeah, and then I made this Riso guy and he's really cute. And I tried putting our old risograph machine had a bunch of our like stickers on it, so I added the stickers and stuff. He's super cute.
The hero of the game.
Yeah.
If you click the link and try it out yourself if you haven't yet.
Yeah.
This is the character you're controlling.
Yeah, the premise is like you're this Riso character, you're like a Riso-drone who's like surveying the damage of the like exploded cargo. Yeah, this is like more like stress about the water. It was just like it literally took me like so long to figure out the water, and then I felt like defeated having to buy the water. But it was like also just really cool like that like there are all these assets and there are all these things, and even the water stuff, like there's just tons of forums online and stuff you can like learn your own like scripts and stuff like by yourself as a single person, and that's like wild. But
right. It's kind of like in the same way that for like printing Riso, there are like color profiles available, or like different tools for like separating images out. There's like things you can use to do this or pilot things.
Yeah. And then another like issue along the way, but also a really fun part of the project was like creating the like UI elements, and UI elements are basically like what sits on the screen like surface, like menus and any like health bars or things like that. So like I had Kurt design like a compass, and Kurt designed some of the like graphic aspects, and I made like a counter script for picking up the stuff, and then the compass follows the drone around. And but the problem was like the water that I bought had this like in the script, it had like a error with like the time, how the time was being used. So I couldn't use like all of these other scripts that I had previously made for other projects. And I like kept having these like problems with opening the menus and having the menus work properly. And that like ate a ton of time out of the project, and getting like, I couldn't get it to a point where I could stop the time and have like the water stop. And I was like, also, we only had like a month to make this. So it was like,
yeah, it was
I think
pretty quick build
yeah,
in the grand scheme.
But yeah, and then here, how do I like escape? I have a couple videos that I can show. Is like the keynote. Yeah. Here, or you should just skip. Like, here's like a video of like with like 3D objects, you have like different textures, and like textures that are like 2-dimensional images that get wrapped around the 3-dimensional object and the meshes. And like a huge problem with this game, or with this game and the previous games too, is that it's to be hosted online. And so like a lot of the work that I got was really high resolution, and you can really only like have a very limited amount of like memory being used for those games. So this like is me showing like the different texture compressions that I was testing out. This is like it at like a super low compression. It just looks really like messed up and you can't see
Potato
anything.
quality.
Yeah, it's like potato vibes. But like it's just really interesting how like when people think about gaming, it's like they think about these AAA games where it's like super high resolution and like lots of beautiful light effects and stuff, and it's like really hard to replicate that in like a like lower poly count, lower like setting. And then this is like me having fun and like having a really hard time to like work with the float settings to make the float work right. And like with every single art object, I had to like spend a lot of time to get the exact percentage right so that the floats weren't like making the objects go like crazy like this. But yeah, we could probably just go back to the presentation. Yeah. Yeah, and then
the ocean is made of numbers,
yeah.
which in this case is true.
Yeah.
No.
So then I think, yeah, thinking about then like what is this project? And what we really wanted to do was to kind of do what we've been setting out to do, which was like include like, you know, over the years, we've kind of expanded all these people that we've worked with so much. Can we like bring them all in for this project, which is like our big first foray into like building a game out from scratch, and thinking about how we thought about like, you know, the Animal Crossing card show. I think it was nice thinking about how people were specifically making things that were essentially going to be destroyed in the ocean, right? Everything that you've made is getting wet, right? So the pressure itself was kind of low. This was I think kind of like a nice counterpoint to like say like Nada itself, when all these objects are meant to be very, very like pristine and handled so carefully. And I think the joke, again, stemming out from the container ship kind of thought starter, is that like we messed up.
Yeah.
And we've made a terrible mistake.
Everyone's going to be so mad at us.
Everyone's going to be so mad at us, which is a nice way to frame it, I think.
Yeah. But yeah, getting like all the different, it's a plus side and a downside to doing a project like this is everyone's work is so different and everyone has different like ways of approaching things. And some of the people we asked are like really amazing 3D artists. And this is like Greg Nachmanovich's piece. And yeah, his project, I had the like hardest time like making work with the WebGL format. And WebGL is basically just like, so it can be hosted within a web browser rather than being downloaded onto your computer. which makes the game, I think like the game had to be under like 200 megabytes or something, like really small. So his project is like really beautiful. It still looks great, but it's just like having to compromise on these things and having to work with the artists and get to a point where like they feel good and comfortable like with how it's going to look in this setting. Because not only is it like a really funky, like weird setting to begin with, then you're asking them to like compromise with the like format too. But he was very cool about it. But yeah, it's similar to Riso, where like things get changed a lot throughout the like process. And yeah, basically just like the video I was showing, like all the textures, all the flat textures are all like really like high definition and beautiful, but then having to like figure out how to compress them and like change the material settings so that they work well within the WebGL format. That was a huge time consuming part of the project for me. Yeah, and then another thing is like, we had a couple projects that were like supposed to be video pieces, but a lot of like web browsers have ad blockers now. So even though the actual game like export can work technically, like the ad blockers block that part of this like code. So like it will just show up as like a black screen. So I had to like, I converted the videos into like individual frames, and then had to make like frame by frame, like basically GIFs in like the 2D sprite editor, which was really fun, but like was this like total like workaround thing that was like, I had to learn this whole new thing like really fast to make it work. But it looks good.
And I think it's so nice about like working within this constraint. Like that video, I had worked on a video and it was going to be like 200 megabytes, and to get it down to 2, I had to compress it so bad. Yeah. But I was like, this is kind of cool. I actually like it this way, you know. Yeah. And I think like, again, the loss of resolution that kind of happens through most of these pieces is something that we embrace in the same way we'd embrace it with risography.
Totally. And then just like another like technical things, just like a lot of people's work were like PNGs, and in order to get them to work with the like float scripts and to be treated as objects, even though they're like flat images, I had to like change a bunch of settings and then like put them within like empty 3D objects so that I could apply these like effects properly. That was like a huge learning thing. That was hard.
How do you make a 2D image look like it's rolling in the ocean, right?
Yeah, yeah. But it was also cool. And
you also made a great soundtrack.
Yeah.
Which you can hear if you play the game.
Yeah, I made a soundtrack on onlinesequencer.com, and it was really fun.
And so just really quickly, we want to shout out all of the people who contributed art to this, which we will just kind of quickly go through and then move on and make it into the Q&A section.
Yeah. This is Diane's cool turnip painting.
Greg's wolf.
Awesome piece.
Orion's amazing dolphin.
Toma's very cute frogs reading books.
Our friend Francesca's poem, which appears on a scroll from a bottle.
Yeah. Rob's amazing, sweet lovers in the ocean piece.
With a big sip.
Yeah.
Cup floating nearby.
Yeah. Ben's awesome poem.
Ben is our studio mate and very, very great guy, and contributed this.
Our friend Deanie's a ceramicist, and she like 3D scanned her piece, and it's like one of my favorite pieces in the show because it's has like a really interesting like look to it, especially being compressed down, where it looks really realistic, but then also like low poly somehow too.
Louisa and Ben collaborated together to produce a series of jellyfish that floated around the entire exhibition. So you kind of have to chase them in order to see all of them. So it's a bit of like an interactive moment.
That was like my idea, but then I was like, they're going too fast. But by the time I realized that we had already exported it, and I was like, I'm not going to redo it. But
yeah,
it was very fun to chase them.
It's a piece by Georgia O'Brien.
Yeah. Taiki's really beautiful 3D piece, which was unfortunately like too large to put in the show. But luckily she had this really awesome rendered image and it was very beautiful.
This is Marisha's amazing buff arm with also starfish.
Yeah.
This is a piece by Rose, one of our collaborators, and another 1/5 of textbooks.
Mm-hmm.
It's a piece by Mel.
Yeah.
This is amazing butterfly that she drew really early on in the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. This is like, we took Tyrone's photos that he gave us and like stretched them out so that when you like swim through it, it looks like an oil spill. Which was really cool. And then John's amazing like
buoy.
Yeah, buoy.
Kind of life support painting. Buoy, and we have a 6-pack wrapper and a floating painting.
I made this like creepy puddle thing with all these like anime people kissing.
Smooch puddle.
Yeah, it's called Cuddle Puddle. It's, yeah, you can keep going. Ellie made a really cool dancing bear. And Sarula had this really beautiful piece that looked like it was glowing when I brought it in. And so I put it by the sun because I thought it would look like the sun was emitting light through it. And yeah, Kurt's like really funny 3D scan of like a car on fire.
Yeah, this is a car near our studio that was like very burnt out. So I put a little guy in there who's having a bad day. So he has some other problems going on.
Yeah, and Emma's awesome like drawing.
Yeah.
And, yeah. Oh yeah. I like quickly made a little like bags to put Gia's really amazing piece onto so it would look like an actual bag of chips.
Yeah.
And yeah, Logan made a series of different like illustration drawings, and yeah, they all were like
floating trash objects.
Yeah, and he wrote these like really amazing funny like descriptions too.
And then this gets compiled from the Riso-drone into a quote unquote auto-generated zine and insurance report, which is very much auto-generated, not designed by us afterwards. And yeah, that's where it all goes.
Yeah.
For the sake of time, do we want to just move on to questions, and then we can do the tips if anyone asks?
Yeah, we had some sort of tips and tricks that we'd come together with, but I think it would be nice to hold on and see what kind of questions that may have come up, and we'd love to answer them.
Yeah.
So maybe if we want to stop that share and do that.
The first question is from Ling. And they're just asking about when you started the project, and maybe you can kind of like also share how long it took, like generally how long it took, and if it, yeah,
I think we started it like roughly after you guys asked us, so I think we had about 3 months or something. It was like that.
I think it was significantly less. I feel like it was, no, I think it was like 3 weeks. I want to say.
It was at least a month, but yeah, basically from start to finish, like we, after getting asked, we like all met and like came up with the idea and then sent it to Sunny, and then like Sunny was like, great idea. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna like, we should just like get a list of all the people together and ask them, and whoever like can't do it, we'll just like save that for another time. Like And we're like shocked that everyone like gave us work pretty quickly. And then, yeah, the actual build for the game was just from start to finish, like in that time window of being asked and from like when the fair started. And I was working on it on the weekends and stuff.
Yeah, I think looking back at it, we got asked on October 26th. Okay. And then we came up with the kind of concept proposal, went it back, and then we had November, and then early December was the fair. So
and we had to have it ready before the fair itself launched by like a week. So yeah, I think we had like maybe 4 days of concepting, and we kind of like talked and kind of worked up our proposal and sent that back. And then then pretty much immediately after that, it was into the kind of build phase, and
I would say like
figure out how to
off
make
the
it
top
work.
of my head, it was something like 4 to 6 weeks, but I'm not sure.
And it's worth mentioning too that in terms of like amount of work that went into this, while Robert and I are comfortable to help kind of like brainstorm and write proposals, like Nichole is the developer who literally worked for maybe like, some 12-hour days back to back of just grinding on Unity, and like really.
It was very fun. It sounds like I did a lot of work, and I did.
No, yeah, you were like focused.
Yeah.
It wasn't like bad work time.
No, it was really great. Yeah. Yeah. Are there any other questions that?
Yeah, someone named Celine is sharing, and I concur that this was really inspiring, just getting like a whole overview of how you guys started and met, and then how you guys keep bringing different people in to the project and like working with them again, and like knowing their practice intimately. So you're like, okay, these are the people I'm gonna hit up for this project, especially with a short timeline. And like, I already kind of have a sense of what work they're gonna make and how we can work together on 3D modeling them and everything. Anyway, Selena asks, I would love to know what the first year of doing textbooks was like, and maybe advice for others in the early stages of doing small indie digital and physical publishing projects, like how to meet with people to collaborate with, handling collaborations, finances, tips, tricks, advice.
Yeah.
Do you want to feel this one out?
Yeah, I can feel this one. I mean, there's definitely, I think, a lot to consider. Like one of the big, I'd have a few kind of like big tips if this is like something that you're interested in. One of which would be to do it with friends. I think probably like first and foremost. It would definitely help. You can absolutely do a project alone, but it's really nice when you have so many people kind of working together to the same goal and like taking on different tasks. And it's easy to kind of like have each other, there to continue like kind of like inspire and push you, be like, oh yeah, keep working on this, or like, we'll help you fold, collate, et cetera, et cetera. Like there's a lot of parts that kind of go into making books. I think the second things is to just keep doing and keep making. Like we have a lot, like we've put out a lot of stuff and published a lot of stuff, and some that you honestly like isn't even on our website. Like some things have absolutely flopped, like for sure. I'm like, this is a good idea. I'm like, oh, nobody actually cares about this. And I think like the more unprecious you can become at an early on, the better. A, it just keeps it more fun. And then B, it's no longer like this kind of big high pressure thing that feels like a stressor rather than like a release of stress.
Definitely.
And, I think like some people obviously come from backgrounds, I think it's particularly kind of like lamented in fine art, that like the final object is so important and your work is so important. And this is like what you are. And I think we kind of think the opposite. It's like, it could just be a very quick thought, and it could be funny. It could hit, it could not hit, it could flop. And that's like all just as important. Yeah. And like, so long as it's not like precious, this isn't like this like important art object that defines us. It's just like maybe a meme we thought of that day and made in that sense. And I think that's like just keep being iterative and not being afraid to like be iterative is a really good way to start.
Yeah. I think too, additionally, like the first year of our project was like, we didn't decide to buy a Riso until like 2 years after doing it. So, we didn't like go in and be like, we're going to spend $10,000 getting like the studio set up, and then we're going to start making the books. So we were a bit like, what can we accomplish by trying to just use resources we have kind of on the side, and how can something be like as kind of short and quick as possible as a way to not necessarily try to be producing our magnum opus. It's funny because like when we were kind of starting the project in 2014, I think like there's a little bit less of a sense of like professionalism, at least in terms of like the output of Riso presses. Like it was a little bit more just like one color, you know, everyone's using kind of like the same weird palette of Riso colors, like flat gold and teal and, you know, purple. A lot of those colors. So there's less of like the kind of like high production value, very perfect, you know, book is actually square rather than trimmed at kind of like a weird rhombus. So I think like, yeah, just, I think like was said, just starting really small and quick was kind of where we went and what we'd suggest.
I feel like starting small, like built up over time to us to be able to do bigger projects and like let artists sort of choose, like when we started working with other artists, like choose how like serious they wanted the project to be or how like complicated. Like obviously we have like some restrictions on how we do it, but like being able to do like a 4-color book for someone is not something we could have done like our first year. Like financially, I don't think we could have been able to do that. And like
even for ourselves, like I remember you did a book like at year 2 that was like 2 colors, and we were like, damn, 2 colors. All right, we're leveling up.
I think maybe just to round it out to Nicole's point, and it's something that we wrote in the tip that I really like, is that like don't start on hard mode. Right. Like when you're gaming and you're playing Halo for the first time, you don't start at legendary, you know, you get a sense for it. And like, it's really hard, I think, as like visual people, like you see something, you're like, I want to do that. And like your taste kind of first exceeds like your skill. And you can get really frustrated, be like, why can't I do that? Like this happens to me all the time, like still. And I know this phenomenon. I'm just like, oh, but I want to do that. Or I see someone like, why can't I make clay do this? You know, and I think start kind of with things that are attainable, easy, and like work your way out from there. And like, again, something can be just as beautiful if it's like super simple as something like that's really complicated.
16 pages.
16 pages. 16 pages, 1 color. Honestly, that's all you really need.
Yeah. And then just like a little thing about the financial part, like because there were 4 of us, like when we first started, we like paid out of pocket altogether for all of our projects and we split it. So the cost burden wasn't as hard, I think, as it could have been for other people, even if it's a 2-person project. And like as we like started making money from the fairs, we just put it in like savings, and like for our studio for a really long time we still just paid out of pocket, like divided individually, and instead of having like funds split from like what we made. So trying to figure out a way to like make some sort of like income off of it, so that at least like your bare minimum, like the resources, like buying paper, like all of the money we make from projects now, it's like that funds paper and ink and repairs and stuff for like all of the new projects. So if one project isn't as successful as another, that's like okay, they sort of like can wash each other out. Like if one project's really successful, and that one will help pay for like the newer projects, if that makes sense. So it lets us still make like fun things instead of being really super like turning it into a business and we have to make a lot of money off of it.
Yeah, that was really helpful. I mean,
long-winded. Sorry.
No, it's all really true. And I think, you know, honestly, to add on to that from the position of doing the book fairs, both as an organizer, but also running Wendy's Subway, which is like a small press and library for people who don't know. like the distro aspect is, I think, a huge part of how you meet people to collaborate with, how more people learn about your project and reach out to you, like applying to fairs, trying to get, even if you can't like have your book at a fair abroad, or maybe you can't afford the table fee that year, having another press, maybe have one book on their table, or like really thinking about distro, I think is a really important thing in like the early stages, like just like going to a bookstore you like and being like, will you carry my book, and submitting them to different bookstores, and I think that's a really important way people learn about your project, and you like expand your network.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Anyone else have any other questions out in the world? There's one here. Okay, Amanda asks, can you tell us how this experience will carry into future projects? What's next?
We haven't like fleshed out exactly, but we've definitely like talked about incorporating like some sort of ongoing virtual project that is in collaboration with artists, but we just haven't like figured out the exact format we want to do that. But that's like something that I'm really excited about, sort of spearheading, but whether that's like a multiplayer game space that we like update every few months, or like it's like only JavaScript and on like just website based, like showcasing people's work, or inviting people who only make specifically web-based projects. We still are fleshing it out, but I think we'll definitely make because this specific like game format of like a game space as like a gallery setting has been received really well. I think we'll keep exploring that and like make iterations of those over time, probably like one a year or something. But try to apply it to like some project we're doing instead of just random, like,
Yeah, I think there's something nice about learning like a skill and being like, oh, I could keep using this. I mean, even with Nichole, like I'd say like in the grand scheme of things, like learn this like pretty quickly and like pretty recently, and is now, making these things like at such a, like, I don't know, like way like honestly, like from like, start to finish, like kind of like 3 weeks of build, if that, like is really like impressive. We were all like, oh, like hell yeah, like Nichole's got this. I don't know, like I made a cup, Kurt made this guy, like we were kind of like accessories onto it, and really couldn't have, obviously like in no way could have done it like without her. But I think there's something like really nice as even as like a collective of people, is like as you kind of like acquire a skill and like build a skill that like can kind of like again like make its way back into like this soup. Right. And I think we've all kind of pursued this as well. Like sometimes like with like ceramics nights, we're like, oh, let's make some fundraising things, or like in this project, let's all in 3D and like throw something into the ocean, keep throwing trash in the ocean. That's what you got to do. I think it's nice to kind of like see how these like builds on skills can kind of keep making their way into projects.
So things are on the horizon, but have not quite hatched.
Cool. I think there's maybe one more question, and then maybe we can call it, unless someone's really dying to ask a question. But this person asks, how do you design, I'm curious how you design space in virtual galleries. What's the design process?
I mean, I guess you can kind of zoom out and just think of a gallery as a place to see things, whether that's art or something else. So it can kind of be whatever you want.
Yeah, I think like approaching, or at least with these specific projects, we approached it in like a very like straightforward way, where you're just like there's a character and there's like a space and there's a floor and there's like either you can put like you're like walking on the floor and navigating it, but then you can just put like whatever wherever. And like with this game, I think it was really fun because we built it on the context of like the floor is water and it's just like open-ended. And so when I was like trying to lay out stuff, I feel like I definitely had like Kurt and Rob like be like, does this look good here? Like when you drive around on the water, like does it feel okay in comparison to like where the other stuff is placed? And you definitely have to think about it differently than like a physical room, because when you're in a physical room, it's like, okay, the ceilings are X high and there's this amount of light, and if I hang things at these places, like the space in between is really important. But with virtual, you can sort of like make whatever you want. So you have to like conceptualize at least like a base level of like, how do I want to navigate it? And how you want to navigate it is like this jumping off point, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Like,
I think too, specifically, like the ocean was really interesting. I know somebody had made a comment here that like, and there was another project kind of like focusing around the ocean. And like, I think for us, again, it came from this kind of like container ship plus Miami situation where like, this is the shipwreck has happened. But even just kind of, I think to like broaden it a bit, like there's something nice about like a never ending expanse. Like if you kept going, you could kind of like, in theory, keep going past like the last piece of art until you hit maybe some walls, et cetera. Like, I think there's, thinking in the context like of like NADA and art fairs and galleries, et cetera, like there are such like strict limits, right? You have this limited space. You can put on up only so many things. And it's like, do you want to put up one or do you want to put up five? And I really kind of think there's like a liberation of like the mind. It's like, what if it went on forever if it could, you know? We reached out to 20 people because that's, you know, who we did, that's who responded. Like, and that was like sort of a time constraint, but like, in this ocean of, you know, like floating art, like it could just kind of continue on forever. And this like false sense of scarcity of art doesn't really need to exist. And I think that's something that I felt really nice in the end.
totally.
Definitely. And I guess another kind of thought on the like, how do you design the space? Like, I think like practically, like when you're in a real space, it's like, there's like a reason why you've ended up wherever you are. At least in theory, you know, it's like being at a gallery, it's like maybe you're out and you just happen to be there, and like the context of it is like existing in real space among whatever other storefronts or fair you're at. So I think like thinking about this game, it's like when you drop in, you're given kind of like cue cards or like kind of in a backstory for like what's happened, and then you spawn right next to the container ship that's on fire, and then that kind of gives you like the context to like know what else is happening. So I guess like designing a virtual space is it's good to consider like how you initiate someone into that space and what the reason for that is, where like in real life you're just like, I'm just me, I'm doing my thing. So yeah, that's another thought.
Yeah. Seems good.
I just give me a thought of, I don't know how it's going to come out, but idea of a zine about spawn camping.
Oh yeah.
Again, just
look forward this summer.
Yeah, that seems like a good, it's like stopping point. Unless
I think so, yeah. And you know, if anyone has any other questions that come up, I think they know where to find you.
Totally. Yeah.
Thanks so much for this. It was really, it was a really amazing presentation and conversation, and nice to see you guys.
Awesome.
Thanks everyone for being here.
Thank you everyone for
Thanks so much.
Yeah, having us. This is fun.
Super awesome.
Cool. Okay, bye everyone. Have a nice evening.
Bye. Thank you.
Bon voyage.